Hello and welcome to Let's Talk, a Tulsa World virtual town hall meeting. I'm Wayne Greene, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Today's town hall is graciously underwritten by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, TTCU Federal Credit Union, and OSU Medicine. Today we're going to be talking about the impact of the COVID-19 infection and its impact on the state with Mike Brose of Mental Health Association Oklahoma and Sara Coffey, a physician and Director of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at OSU Health Sciences Center. Welcome to both of you. We've previously spent time on this forum talking about the physical health challenges of the COVID-19 outbreak, but today we're going to look at its mental health implications. These are very strange times. We're living in isolated existences and having to adjust the ways we do a lot of things. Mike, in that sphere, what has you most concerned right now?
Yeah, I think, Wayne, the big thing is it's just we've got a perfect storm on our hands. We're obviously worried about all the physical health implications of COVID-19, but we're also trying to really address all these other things that are kind of coming at us. You mentioned that many of us are living in sort of isolated existence. Then you've got people out there who are essential services that are having to put their health and take physical health risk to potential added exposure to COVID-19. Then we're worried about our aging families. We're worried about our children, where we've got our children with us all the time right now, adolescents and children, and Dr. Coffey will address that, I'm sure, more later in this. But and so, you've got food, you've got economic worries, you've got worries about, am I going to have a job, or I've lost my job? And so it's just a convergence of things. And that whole totality, everything I think it's very, very wearing on us from a mental health standpoint.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Coffey, parents are especially challenged in all of this because they have to explain some very difficult issues to their children that they might not understand themselves. They have to step into a lot of the roles that are normally filled by schools and deal with their own stress and do all this simultaneously. What's your 2-minute message to parents that are in these trying circumstances?
Yes, that's a great question. And I think the most important thing that we can do as caregivers and as guardians of our children is first remember that we can't give from an empty cup. And so it's really important that we're utilizing self-care and taking care of ourselves as the adults in the room. Because as Mike mentioned, this is a stressful time. And although all of us have our individual stressors, collectively we're going through this together, and there will be a beginning, a middle, and an end to this. But during this time, it is really important that we're using our effective coping skills as parents, whether that be taking a mindful minute, going for a walk, practicing meditation, reaching out and talking on the phone to loved ones, finding ways to connect. And I always think it's helpful to let kids know that we're doing this to take care of ourselves. As adults in the room, we're often modeling the behavior for our children. So if we can let our children know, listen, I'm going to take a walk by myself for myself right now, it helps our children to understand effective ways to cope with all of this stress that is going on as well.
Mike, for people who are already dealing with serious mental health challenges, this sudden shift in lifestyles can be especially challenging, I imagine. And I suspect they may end up at greater risk of contracting COVID-19 as a result. What sort of resources are available to those people and to their loved ones who want to help them stay safe?
Well, I know many of the providers in the community and in the state, OSU included, OU, the community mental health care system, they are continuing to provide services. They're continuing to create and design new business models, ways they can reach the people they serve, what have you. So for the population of people who are affected by a mental health related issue, mental illness, who are engaged in treatment, many of them are going to continue using telemedicine, using phone, FaceTime, all kinds of ways that we're continuing to be able to provide those services. For the general population, again, Dr. Coffey touched on this, so important that we have got to take care of ourselves, both our physical health issues and our mental health issues. And that way it starts with me, it starts with you, it starts with your readers, your viewers, about taking care of themselves. So then, as Dr. Coffey mentioned, then we've got the capacity to care and reach out and care for our loved ones. So good mental health, being in routines. Routines are very, very important. Getting exercise, nutrition, rest. Those are the things that, from just a general mental health standpoint, that are important every day of our lives. They're even more important now.
Dr. Coffey, how can parents recognize that they need to give themselves a break, that the stress of the situation is just getting too high, and they need to do something to take care of themselves? And what can they do to relieve that stress?
Yeah, again, another great question. And again, I think all of us will have our individual kind of triggers and tells, right? So this is really a time, I think, where crisis can almost put a magnifying glass on what we're experiencing. So some individuals might feel like they get a little bit more irritable. They might experience stress in different parts of their bodies. They might even have physical symptoms with GI distress or maybe headaches. And so it's important, again, as adults and as us providing self-care, to kind of take our emotional pulse, if you will, and recognize before we react to something that we're responding instead. So again, just even some gentle breathing exercises can be helpful. Before you're tending to a child or tending to an immediate need that needs to be there, taking a breath, breathing in for 4 counts, holding for 4 counts, and then breathing out for 4 counts can be really helpful and can make the difference between reacting to a situation that might kind of further stir the pot versus responding in a way that can be helpful for all the great work that we're trying to do.
I'd imagine, Dr. Coffey, that just being honest with your children is also critical here, to say, honey, I don't necessarily understand all of this situation myself, but we're going to get through it.
Absolutely. And I think that's an important point too, is that we recognize that children can almost be like little sponges, right? They have a tendency to really notice the stress of their families and their caregivers, but also recognize that developmentally, their worries might be starkly different than our worries as adults. And so when I talk to parents about how to talk with kids about this current situation, I encourage them to ask open-ended questions. The question that a child might have might be starkly different than the question we think they have. They might be more concerned about when they're going to be able to go back to school or to see their kids again, or if they can talk to their grandmother. Those are often easier questions to answer than what does this all mean or what's going to happen next. And so meeting them where they're at can be very helpful in finding the best way to answer their question openly and honestly.
Mike, let me read you a piece of an email we received from one of our readers. As many as 18,400 Oklahomans could attempt suicide over the next 12 months under the burdens of stress and depression, according to a report from Healthy Minds Policy Initiative. A catastrophic physical and mental health disaster is descending rapidly upon Oklahoma. That's terrifying, Mike. What steps should the state and local governments be taking now to recognize that problem and address it proactively?
Well, Wayne, in the middle of a crisis, there's no substitute for leadership. And we need to see leadership at our federal level, at our state level, from our state house, our elected officials, our county government, our city governments. I think our city and county government are doing fantastic right now. I think our mayor is setting the right kind of tone, sending the right kind of messages. The same with our county commissioners here in Tulsa County. We've seen the same thing. But I think the other thing we must remember is that, there's no, in business, we talk about that you have to sometimes invest money to save money. Oklahoma continues to be one of the lowest per capita funded states for mental health care services and substance abuse treatment in the entire country. And so I think right now is a time for investment and looking at that as a way of investing money to save money. And, on any given day, outside this crisis, a lot of your readers, your viewers, probably have no idea that we have almost 3 times as many suicides in this country as we have homicides. And so suicide on every day is at risk. So it's really important. There will never have enough mental health professionals. There'll never be enough of us to be able to do that. So we need people and families to reach out to their loved ones, as Dr. Coffey said, call them, text them, check on them. Let us know if we can be of help to that. process. They can contact the Mental Health Association. They can call 211. They can call 911 if necessary to make sure that their loved ones are safe. But now's the time to really reach out to them and be aware of that kind of level of distress. And intervention works. And we can intervene and save lives right now, and be very, very aware that the risks are much higher than they are on any other given day in the middle of this crisis.
A minute ago, Mike, we were talking about people who were facing significant mental health challenges prior to the situation. But it seems to me that given the extraordinarily high stress that we're under here, people who've never given mental health a second thought are facing challenges that like never before. And they may not recognize it as mental health challenges. They just realize they can't sleep, or they can't stay asleep, or that they're having a hard time getting out of bed in the morning, or that perhaps they're drinking more than they're comfortable with, or perhaps using drugs, or they're losing their tempers. What strategies are there for effective stress management for ordinary people in this situation?
Well, you mentioned it. First of all, the first thing is to be very, very aware and very cognizant about excessive use of alcohol or other substances, either prescribed or non-prescribed, as a way of trying to cope. There are much more effective, healthy ways to do that. I've been on my stationary bike this morning. I've already done 8 miles. A lot of times, people look at mental health professionals and think, oh, that's just second nature to us. No, I'm having to monitor my mental health right now. I'm having to take steps. I'm trying to stay in a routine. I'm getting up in the morning. I'm taking my regular time. I'm taking my shower. I'm shaving, getting ready to go to work, getting my clothes on, getting ready, even though I'm not leaving my home right now, and trying to stay in a routine. I've talked to many, many people who said the same thing. Right now, working from home in the way we're communicating right now, people are exhausted. I shut it down at the end of the day when I normally would shut it down. I do other things. I'm taking walks. You can still do that. If you can't do anything else, you can take a walk, get out in your yard. People are starting to rediscover lost hobbies, different things to distract our mind. My yard's looking better. So those are, a lot of times these aren't magic things. These are practical, common sense things, and they can have a very positive impact on our mental health care.
Dr. Coffey, a lot of families are under additional economic pressure because of lost jobs or furloughs. I grew up in a generation where parents just didn't reveal those sort of issues to their children. How much should parents let their children in on these sort of problems?
Yeah, again, a great question. And kind of as we spoke previously, that if there's stressors that are in the home, oftentimes kids can experience it. But also recognizing too that depending on the age of the child, they'll have a different developmental perspective of what's going on. So again, I think it can be helpful to ask specifically for kids, tell me what you're worried about, because they might have no, care to discuss it. They might want to know a little bit about why isn't dad going to work, what's going to happen. And again, it can be very helpful to be open and honest with kids in a developmentally appropriate level. So small bites that are really meeting them where they're at can be the most effective way to have those conversations. And then again, opening up, do you have any other questions about that, can be helpful as well. But we don't need to, as parents, feel like we have to disclose everything to our children, because that might be way too much information. But those open, honest lines of communication, meeting kids where they're at, can be really helpful to kind of temper some of the worry and concern that kids have.
Mike Brose, Dr. Coffey, I want to thank you both for your participation in our town hall today. Thank you to viewers for watching our program, which is graciously underwritten by the George Kaiser Family Foundation, TTCU Federal Credit Union, and OSU Medicine. Join us again next week for our 4th Tulsa World Let's Talk virtual town hall, which will look at efforts to help local businesses and workers survive the economic challenges of the COVID-19 shutdown. I'm Wayne Greene, editorial pages editor of the Tulsa World. Goodbye for now.